You roll your suitcase across the border, passport in hand, already picturing butter tarts, turquoise lakes, and charming Canadian sidewalk cafes. But then, ding! Your booking gets cancelled. Airbnb disappears. The border agent smiles and shakes their head. Not today, buddy. It's not that Canada isn't friendly anymore. It's just that they're temporarily limiting their hospitality. While Americans are still excitedly road tripping and believing every place is theirs to explore, many Canadian towns are quietly putting up signs that read, "Not right now." From Montreal to Tofino, a new wave is rising, protecting housing, preserving identity, and saying goodbye to the kind of travel where you just book and go. What's happening here? And can you, an American traveler once welcomed with a maple syrup smile, still find your place on Canada's travel map? Montreal, the city of bagels, jazz, and an Airbnb ban? There's a truth many Americans aren't quite ready to accept. You can't just decide to vacation in Canada whenever you want anymore. And if your chosen destination is Montreal, the city often called the Paris of North America, then brace yourself. Not every bagel is ready to welcome you. For years, Montreal was the perfect weekend getaway for experience-hungry Americans. French culture, European architecture, affordable prices, and a lineup of cute Airbnbs ready to host last-minute travelers. A little croissant, a night of jazz in Le Plateau, coffee the next morning on a balcony watching people stroll Rue Saint-Denis. That dream was once easily within reach, until it wasn't. Since 2024, the city has begun a campaign to clean up short-term rentals. No more trendy exposed brick lofts in Old Port. No more attic apartments overlooking the Saint Laurent River. Familiar options on Airbnb, Vrbo, and dozens of other platforms suddenly vanished like early snow. The reason? It's not because locals hate tourists. It's because they no longer have a place to live. The housing crisis in Montreal didn't arrive with sirens, but it knocked on every neighborhood's door. Like many major cities around the world, Montreal faces a severe housing shortage, especially for middle-income residents. When thousands of units were pulled from the long-term market to become weekend homes for American visitors, students, teachers, office workers, those who once called this city home slowly had to move out, and the government chose to act. As of 2025, a new policy took effect. Only apartments that are the owner's primary residence with specific permits and located in approved zones may be rented short-term. The result? Over 10,000 listings disappeared almost overnight. Some neighborhoods, like Plateau Mont-Royal or Vieux-Montréal, have now become near no-go zones for tourist accommodations. So, what happens to American visitors? They suddenly became the unwilling victims of a policy they didn't know existed. Booked a place months in advance, only to arrive and receive a last-minute cancellation email. Call the host and hear only a sigh. "Sorry, I don't want to risk a $10,000 fine." Hotels? Fully booked and triple the price. And instead of a romantic evening under the old city lights, they find themselves wandering around looking for a hostel like broke college students. Is Montreal hating on American tourists? Not at all. Montrealers are still as polite as ever. They still smile when you ask for directions in English. They still pour your wine at dinner and still recommend you try poutine with local craft beer. But behind the smile is a very Canadian truth. We welcome you as long as you don't push us out of our own homes. This isn't just about Montreal. It's the tip of a melting iceberg, and Canada, as usual, is choosing to deal with it in a polite but firm way. No protests, no shouting matches, just a new law, a few lines of notice, and thousands of accommodations evaporating like mist. And if you're American, you'll need to rethink your approach. Traveling to Montreal is no longer a click-and-go move. You need a plan. You need to check local laws. You need to book early and read the fine print. Essentially, you need to behave like a Canadian, cautious, organized, and respectful of the community you're visiting. Because, in the end, Montreal isn't closing its doors. It's simply saying, if you want to come, come with respect. And if you still crave a weekend with the sound of saxophones echoing from a third-floor balcony, there's still a way. Stay in a hotel or wait for summer. Because from June to September, the city blooms again. And Montrealers, as always, will smile and pour you a cool glass of wine. Just don't ask about Airbnb. British Columbia, when wooden cabins become protected heritage. If Montreal threw you off with last-minute accommodation cancellations, then try experiencing what it's like to stake out a cabin in British Columbia. Not because they're unavailable, but because new laws have quietly locked the doors from the inside. This western province used to be a dream getaway for American travelers. Charming lakeside wooden cabins, snowy mountain views at breakfast, cozy evenings by a pine fireplace, and every window framing a living postcard. But in 2025, British Columbia, BC, is quietly undergoing a short-term rental overhaul. A reform that, if you're an American tourist, may have already disqualified you from your dream before you even knew it. Where did it begin? A familiar issue called, "No one can afford to live here anymore." In Vancouver, Whistler, Victoria, and even in small mountain towns, locals can no longer rent homes because the market has been overtaken by vacation investment owners. Houses that were once homes now appear only a few weeks a year, reserved for guests from Seattle, San Diego, or Texas. People who can pay $300 a night to feel connected to nature. Meanwhile, the barista, the plumber, or the school teacher must live precariously or commute for hours each day just to work. And so the provincial government acted, in a very Canadian way. No slogans, no shouting, just a new law effective. May 1st, every short-term rental must be the primary residence of the host. No exceptions, no creative investments, no just borrowing a friend's keys. If you don't live there, you can't rent it to tourists. Period. This law doesn't only affect big cities, it touches the very places Americans love most. Whistler, the dreamy ski town that once dazzled American travelers, is now taking down the welcome sign. Kelowna, the lakeside wine country of the Okanagan, is slowly pulling back its Airbnb lifeline. Victoria, the provincial capital with streets like storybooks, is now forced to say sorry to American guests just looking for a weekend stay. And the funny thing? Canadians don't hate American tourists. They still remember your visit last winter. They still tell American jokes at roadside bars. But they also know, if tourism overtakes residents, the beauty they've protected becomes an empty playground. How are Americans reacting? With humor and, sometimes, a little frustration. The cabin I booked in February just got delisted. What kind of lakeside cabin needs proof that it's the bed you actually sleep in? A traveler from Oregon wrote on a forum, "I didn't think Canada was the kind of place where I'd have to prove I had the right to stay, when I'm paying for it." Canada's answer? We didn't think we'd have to rent back the house we grew up in. Is British Columbia closing its doors? Not quite. They're just locking the side entrance. You can still visit, but rethink how you arrive. Book a hotel or a true homestay where the host actually lives there, ready to tell you tales of winter bears. Take the train from Vancouver to Kamloops and witness scenery like rolling through an IMAX movie. Respect the space as if it were your own home, without needing to plant an American flag on the lawn. And more than that, understand this. British Columbia isn't pushing visitors away. They're learning how to protect themselves. Wooden cabins are no longer backdrops for Instagram check-ins, but symbols of the fight to preserve balance between humans and nature, between living and vacationing, between homeowners and guests. So next time you open an app looking for a cabin in BC, and all you see is a blank screen, don't be discouraged. Maybe you're no longer a regular guest, but if you come with respect, someone might still save you a seat by the fireplace. Like a friend, not a stranger. Niagara-on-the-Lake, when history has no room for hurry. If you've ever dreamed of a weekend unplug, where you stroll cobblestone streets, stop by a family-owned winery, and sink into an old wooden cottage, then Niagara-on-the-Lake is your dream destination. But that was the dream of 2019. In 2025? The town is still as picturesque as a painting. But now, before you even step into that historic house beside the vineyard, a newly passed regulation might just tell you you're no longer allowed to stay there. Why? Because here, history no longer has room for convenience. And Airbnb, once the bridge between vacation-loving Americans and European-style wooden homes, has now become the villain in the story of community preservation. Niagara-on-the-Lake has chosen a different path. Fewer guests, but the right guests. Unlike bustling Toronto or trendy Montreal, this town used to be a secret only the in-the-know shared. But like every secret, once TikTok found it, the peace didn't last. And the residents here, people who've lived by the vineyards since before staycation became a trend, began to feel like renters in their own town. They don't hate tourists. In fact, they really like American visitors, especially those who know how to savor a local Merlot and say bonjour, even though they're in Ontario. But they also know one thing for sure. If every empty home turns into a 3-night rental, this peaceful town will soon become a wine-themed Disneyland. And so, the new law was born. Simple but firm. No one can rent short-term unless they live in that house. No second homes, no investment properties. If you want to rent your cottage to American guests, you have to pour them wine each night and listen to the morning bird song with them. Okay, not mandatory, but basically, you have to live there. The result? Hundreds of listings that once appeared on travel apps vanished like a chilled wine glass left under the summer sun. Many Americans who booked in spring received apology emails come summer. Some were confused. Wait, I already booked, didn't I? But the answer is, yes, you did. But the rules just changed. And that's also true. So what's really going on here? Niagara-on-the-Lake isn't just protecting housing, it's protecting a concept. Community. They don't want their main street to be nothing but 9 artisanal ice cream shops and couples taking wedding photos under floral arches. They want kids still playing in front yards, seniors still sipping tea on porches, and every Monday morning people going to work. Not a ghost town after festival season. One local once shared on local television, "We don't hate tourists, we just hate the feeling that we no longer have neighbors." Americans, with their trademark optimism, might ask, so what should I do? The answer is, slow down. Return to the old values, the ones Niagara-on-the-Lake is trying to preserve. Book early, stay at a traditional inn, chat with your host, sign up for a guided wine tour. Don't expect a last-minute trip like you're going to Vegas. This is a place to live slowly, drink slowly, and understand not everything valuable comes easily. Because here, the most precious thing isn't the photo next to a vineyard. It's the feeling that you're inside a real community, where every house has its lights on year-round. And if you're patient enough to understand that, Niagara-on-the-Lake still welcomes you with open arms. Just leave a kind review. And don't bring a drone, because in their world, silence doesn't mean lack of signal, It's a choice. Banff and Lake Louise. When nature says enough. If you've ever dreamed of a morning in Banff, where sunlight shines down on the Rockies, reflecting off the turquoise waters of Lake Louise like it's been Photoshop enhanced, then you're not alone. Millions of Americans have dreamed the same, and a significant number of them have already come. Then came again, and kept on coming, to the point where nature, which doesn't speak human language, has been forced to take action to be heard. Banff and Lake Louise don't hate you, but they're tired. More precisely, the people who live, work, and care for this stunning land are starting to feel like full-time front desk agents at a hotel that never closes. And in 2025, they decided to shut a few doors, or at least hang up a sign that says, "Entry by reservation only." Picture this. You drive out at 5 a.m., thinking you'll arrive early to score a parking spot and enjoy the peaceful view. But when you get there, the full sign is already lit. Cars lined up like LA traffic, and a park ranger, smiling politely in true Canadian style, tells you to turn around and go online to book for next week. It's not that they want to make things difficult, it's just that they have no other choice. This ecosystem is under immense pressure. Trails eroded by thousands of selfie-seeking footsteps. Deer, bears, and wolves losing habitat because visitors keep stepping in just for a bit. Locals, once proud to live in nature, now have to drive over an hour from Calgary because they can't afford to rent in Banff itself. And so, a series of love control measures have been introduced. Personal vehicles are restricted. Certain routes are shuttle-only and must be reserved in advance. Many of the most scenic trails now use an online lottery system. And of course, Airbnb is being tightly regulated, with limits on location, duration, and type of rental. It might feel like trying to get a reservation at a famous restaurant, except this restaurant is made of pine forests, lakes, and snow-capped peaks. And the head chef is Mother Nature herself. Americans, as usual, are responding with their trademark humor. One traveler from Chicago lamented on Reddit, "This is the first time I've ever been rejected by a lake." A TikToker posted a disappointed video after arriving in full hiking gear, only to end up back at Calgary's shopping mall. The comments? Canadians chimed in, "Next time, book ahead. You're adorable, but our nature's a bit picky." But the truth is, this isn't bad. It's necessary. Banff can't stay the world's desktop wallpaper without getting damaged. Lake Louise can't be everyone's weekend destination if we don't learn how to arrive at the right time, the right way. The people here are still friendly, but they need rest too. Hotel staff can't work 7 days a week. Park rangers can't protect bears and double as tour guides for TikTok vloggers. And the community here deserves to breathe. Literally. So if you're an American planning to visit Banff and Lake Louise, you're still welcome. But make reservations like Canadians do. Leave the drone at home, or at least keep it in your backpack. Tread lightly, speak softly, and put your trash in the right place. And if you don't make it to the lake this time, take it as a chance to discover something else. Maybe a small cafe in Canmore, or a lesser-known trail that doesn't require a lottery entry. Because sometimes the most beautiful thing isn't in the photo you bring back. It's in knowing you stepped into somewhere sacred without leaving a mark. And if you can do that, Banff won't just be a destination. It'll be a memory. The real kind. If not, well, Calgary has a great mall, fewer bears, way better Wi-Fi. Lake OHara, a paradise not meant for the latecomers. If Banff and Lake Louise are the Hollywood stars of the Rockies, then Lake OHara is the reclusive artist with surreal beauty. Few people know it, few people see it, and few people are allowed to go. Lake OHara is located in Yoho National Park in British Columbia, just a sleepy yawn away from Lake Louise. But to reach that turquoise water, you'll need more than just hiking boots. You'll need luck, strategy, and a bit of Tibetan monk-style patience. Because this isn't a tourist destination. It's a strictly protected area, and in 2025, it became the symbol of a growing philosophy in Canada. Just because Google Maps shows it doesn't mean you can go. Welcome to a place that only welcomes very few. Want to go to Lake OHara? You have to book a shuttle, the only bus allowed in. And there are only a few dozen tickets each day. And if you think, oh, I'll just book a few days late, sorry to say, the entire summer's tickets usually sell out within minutes of the system opening. No ticket, no entry, no exceptions. No, I just want to pop in real quick. The welcome sign here isn't a banner. It's a no vehicles notice, barricades, and rangers with patient smiles, but very firm tone. Why so strict? Because Lake OHara is a glass-fragile ecosystem where even a small number of visitors can damage ancient plant life. Trails are barely wider than a backpack. Grass grows on millennia-old stone, and the lakes reflect like mirrors, but can cloud over if hit by too many waves of people. The locals here aren't human. They're deer, squirrels, bears, and flocks of birds being carefully monitored for conservation. And what they need isn't laughter. They need silence. How do Americans respond? In short, confused, but trying to adapt. One tourist from Seattle posted on Reddit, "I was already at Lake Louise, saw a sign saying Lake OHara was 12 kilometers away. I thought, oh, convenient, and got turned around at the gate like knocking on your ex's door at midnight. A family from Texas drove 10 hours, stopped to ask for directions to the lake, and were told, oh, you needed to book that back in March. It's August now. Frustrating? Sure. But then, many Americans started to understand. This isn't a place to drop by. It's a place to be chosen. A rare experience, and that's what makes it precious. If you're lucky enough to make the daily visitor list, Lake OHara gives you a feeling like receiving a private gift from nature. No Wi-Fi, no food service, no selfie sticks waving around. Just wind, water, and the sense that you're walking on a carpet no one has stepped on before. Photos? Allowed, but no drones. Camping? Yes, but only if you registered at the start of the year. And every scrap of trash you bring in, you carry out. Everyone signs a pack-in, pack-out agreement before entry. Here, nature doesn't clean up after you. You must show gratitude and care yourself. Lake OHara isn't for everyone, and that's what makes it special. In an age where everything can be ordered now and delivered in 2 hours, a place that still demands waiting, respect, and commitment is a gentle but deep reminder. And maybe that's exactly what Canada is trying to protect. Not just the scenery, but the values. So if you're an American traveler planning your trip, don't just think of check-in and check-out. Think check sure, as in make sure you understand the place you're stepping into. Because Lake OHara isn't for visiting, it's for understanding. And if you come the right way, it'll offer you something no app can book, a silence deep enough to hear yourself. If not, don't worry, you can still look at the pictures on Instagram. Just remember, those photos are worth about a year of stalking ticket releases and a few weeks of silent walking practice. Gwaii Haanas, when travel must learn to bow. If places like Banff or Lake OHara ask you to book in advance, stay quiet, and pack light, then Gwaii Haanas, a national park deep in the southern part of Haida Gwaii, British Columbia, doesn't just ask that. It turns the question back on you. Are you coming here to look or to understand? Because here, you're not just stepping into a nature reserve, you're stepping into the sacred territory of the Haida people. one of the oldest and most resilient indigenous cultures on the planet. There's no road that brings you here without permission. Want to visit Gwaii Haanas? You can't drive yourself. You can't just drop in. There's no such thing as, "I got lost here because of Google Maps." You must register for a licensed guided tour, learn about cultural conduct, and sign a pledge not to violate sacred areas. And if you're thinking, "Oh, it's probably just like an eco-tour," well, this is completely different. Because here, you're not a guest. You're a temporary applicant, and the host, the Haida, don't need you to come to make money, but need you to respect what they fought for centuries to protect. A land that was nearly stolen, now welcomes, with boundaries. In the 20th century, Gwaii Haanas was ravaged by logging, industrial fishing, and unauthorized development projects. Ancient trees were felled. Cultural sites were neglected. Totem poles, once the soul of villages, collapsed in silence. The Haida didn't protest loudly. They protected in their own way, through persistence. And after many years of struggle in 1993, Gwaii Haanas became Canada's most unique national park, where Indigenous people co-manage everything, from welcoming guests, guiding tours, to deciding who may even set foot here. In 2025, those limits have grown even stricter. No private fishing boats, no cruise ships dropping by, no filming without explicit consent. And violators, from tourists to influencers, may be asked to leave immediately. Americans arrive with curiosity and leave with a bit of change. Some tourists from San Francisco once thought, "Oh, sounds like Alaska." But after 3 days on a boat with a Haida guide, they stood before an old totem pole and realized, this isn't a photo spot. It's a grave, a living history, a set of stories never written in books. A family from Boston shared, "My daughter's 13. She cried when an elder told stories about forests being taken. And after the trip, she deleted TikTok. No one told her to. She just felt it." Gwaii Haanas isn't for enjoyment. It's for learning. This is the only place in Canada where you can quietly hear the wind through a forest that's never been logged. And at the same time, understand why they don't want you to leave footprints. This is where you kayak not knowing if a whale is swimming beside you. And if it is, you're asked not to cheer. You may feel restricted. But when you realize that these limits are what preserve the land, you'll understand. Freedom isn't doing whatever you want. It's doing what's right. If you're an American who loves nature, this is the place for you. But not the way you think. You don't need a 600mm lens. You don't need a drone. You need to listen, to arrive humbly, and to bring good boots so you can walk through the forest, leaving nothing but the trace of wind. The Canadians here aren't selling you a tourist ticket. They're inviting you to join a journey of living cultural preservation. If you understand that, Gwaii Haanas isn't a strict place. It's a gift. And if you're only here to check in, you'll find this place a bit cold, a bit distant, and not friendly. But the truth is, that's not the fault of this place. It's just, you haven't yet learned how to bow when entering the sacred. Nunavut, the far north, and the question, why are you here? Have you ever heard of Nunavut? If not, that's okay. Even some Canadians aren't sure they spell it right the first time. But for those who love adventure, extreme nature, and crave setting foot on a land no one has checked into yet, Nunavut is the place calling out to brave souls. Still, remember this clearly. Here, you are the one being evaluated, not the one in charge. Nunavut isn't a destination. It's a different world. This is Canada's far northern territory, nearly the size of Western Europe, with fewer people than an NFL stadium on a Sunday. There are no highways connecting towns, no McDonald's, no Starbucks, and definitely no gas station next to a hotel. What you'll find here? Ice flows like surreal paintings, a sun that doesn't set in summer, and an ancient Inuit culture that exists more powerfully than any travel brochure could ever describe. Americans arrive, and soon realize this isn't the Arctic tour they imagined. Many come to Nunavut full of excitement, to see polar bears, to stand on glaciers, or snap photos with villagers in traditional fur clothing. And then they're asked to pause everything. You can't hike into a park alone. You can't set up camp just anywhere that looks nice. You can't fly your drone to capture the northern lights. And, here's something few expect, you need permission to access most areas of national parks. Some places require you to be accompanied by an Inuit guide. Not for service, but for respect. Inuit people don't greet you with words, but with a look. Why are you here? In today's world, where travel often equals, I paid, I have the right, Nunavut resets that balance. Here, land is not just land. It's where their ancestors lived, hunted, died, and left their spirits behind. That remote beach you think is perfect for a picnic could be an ancestral burial ground. That windy hilltop might be a sacred site of ceremony from 500 years ago and still in use today. The Inuit don't hate tourists, but they are tired of people arriving, snapping photos, and leaving to tell the wrong story. And so, in 2025, new rules are being tightened. Tourists must apply for permits before visiting certain parks. Many cruise ships are denied port access. Some communities have stopped working with international tour companies. And one truth is growing clearer. Not everyone should come here. A village leader in Qinghai once said at an environmental summit, "We don't need people coming to watch our lives like a movie. If you're not coming to learn, then don't come." Sound strict? Maybe, but this is a land that needs protecting before it's even looked at. The ice is melting. Caribou are declining. Traditional hunting is disappearing. Not because the Inuit are changing, but because the outside world is encroaching too fast. And in that storm, Nunavut chooses to hold on to itself, quietly but firmly. So can Americans still come? The answer is yes, but it's a conditional yes. If you come with respect, ready to learn, not demanding convenience, and understanding that the silence here isn't unfriendly, it's a form of hospitality, then Nunavut might be the trip that changes how you see the world and yourself. But if you're coming to vlog, test the cold, and go home bragging I survived the Arctic, then maybe choose Alaska. They've got better services. Because in the end, Nunavut doesn't ask what you want. Nunavut asks, are you worthy? And if you're silent, humble, and listening, maybe this frozen land will whisper back with the shimmering northern lights overhead. No words, but you'll understand.